by Craig Wasson. Dr. Neil, played by Craig Wasson, is trying to help the kids, but just doesn't believe them.
Yeah, right.
And even the head doctor, she also doesn't believe, and Kristen's mom doesn't believe.
Right.
Kristen's mom is a cold fucking mean bitch.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she is. But you always have, if you notice, like in the first Freddy, you always have like one of the parents that are just, the dial is turned up to like 13 on the worst quality they could have. So like in this case, it's the horrible, not caring mother. You always have like the authority figure who just doesn't think that anything you're saying is real.
Yeah.
And then that's why we now have Nancy back in the game. She's here to actually help these kids because she believes them.
Yeah. Kristen's mom is honestly almost kind of nightmarish herself.
Oh yeah.
With her costuming, because they're very bold, like bright colors,
yes.
but like garishly bright.
Yes.
And like,
harsh angles.
Yeah, like
very
even her hair
angles.
is a harsh angle.
Yeah, yeah. So they make her look very rigid.
And she's
sharp.
She's not kind.
No.
She's very dismissive of her daughter's problems.
Yeah.
And
just medicate her.
Yeah.
Just medicate her. That's all she cared about.
Yeah, so in one of the conversations between Nancy and Dr. Neil, Nancy drops a bottle of pills. He glances at the label and sees it's called Hypnosil, and he's looking it up, and it's a dream suppressant. And it's an experimental
dream suppressant.
So Kristen is now sketching Freddy's house, which is also Nancy's former home.
Yes.
After she's also constructed it out of paper mache and popsicle sticks at the beginning of the movie, which I was super impressed by.
Crafting.
Yeah, I love crafting. I'm envious of people who can craft well.
Oh, same. Yeah. Like, I'm very detail oriented, but I don't have the patience for crafting because it never turns out the way I want it to look in my head.
I can't make my hands
Yes.
do the thing my brain wants it to.
Yes, that's exactly right.
I actually had an interesting conversation with my tattoo artist, and he said that even if you are not a good artist, you can be a good tattooer. You know, there are tattoo artists who work exclusively from Flash and don't create custom pieces. And you can have a very good career doing that. But there are other artists who prefer to do custom pieces. And so just because you don't have artistic ability doesn't mean that you can't be a successful tattoo artist. And so that crafting thing, I think in theory, you can learn the methods behind it and churn things out even if you're not, like you can follow recipes.
Do you consider baking crafting?
I do.
Do you?
Yeah.
I mean, it would make sense because they sell a lot of baking items in craft stores, but I would never put the two together.
I think you can take anything and make it into art, whether it's, you know, painting a picture or taking a picture or baking or even making a meal in general. It doesn't actually have to be like you put something out there into the world that makes a statement.
Sure.
And honestly, you can make food that makes a statement if you want. Like, it's all possible to do. So I think, honestly, just about anything could be art.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty fucking high.
So we need to rewind a little bit because we got to see one of the coolest Freddy transition scenes and a dummy Patricia Arquette that was like an expert faller because you just saw her cross her arms on her chest and like, all right, you're going to fall as safely as possible.
And then the Freddy snake.
The Freddy snake. And Nancy is a badass.
Mm-hmm.
She like, you think she's awake. She stands up, she like rubs her eyes, and she sits down in the chair and she falls through. She's right back in her old house. She doesn't miss a beat.
No.
She grabs a shard of mirror, I think it was, and goes running after Snake Freddy and just stabs him right in the eye. Like, just was on it.
This is a Nancy who is not afraid.
Nope.
who is self-assured and ready to fucking fight. I love it.
Yes. So when we started when we had talked about doing the Final Girl series, I knew this had to be number one because Nancy's not my favorite Final Girl. Spoiler alert, it's Neve Campbell. But I mean, I think this is definitely the strongest Final Girl. Like, this is the one who came back with a vengeance. Like, she had her own agenda.
Honestly, this is what they wanted to do with Halloween 2018 and Texas Chainsaw 2022, and
missed the mark entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Missed the mark entirely. And that is a huge bummer because who doesn't love Jamie Lee Curtis?
And that movie's fine.
Yeah.
It's not terrible.
It's not. But it's not the, Halloween fans wanted.
Like, Nightmare 3 was meant to end this series. And
yes.
if that had been the very last Nightmare on Elm Street film, it would have been a great trilogy.
It really would have.
It would have had, like, the Dark Horse middle movie that found its audience a long time later. But it had that really strong first and that really strong finish. And, everyone lives happily ever after.
Again, like you said, Wes Craven had preferred for Freddy to be a one-off, one-hit wonder, if you will.
I really like this group scene where you kind of meet all the kids.
Yeah.
The conversations between the kids, they feel very genuine. Like, they're antagonistic.
Yeah.
But also, like, caring. Like, I understand your shit, but I'm not going to let your shit.
Yeah, like, I see you, I understand you, but, like, I got my own shit to worry about. Like, I hope you get better, and I'm rooting for you, but I can't help you with any of it.
And I think that their antagonism towards each other
is animosity.
It's not animosity because it's not like genuine like hatred. I think what I'm looking at is their relationships are antagonistic in a healthy way, meaning that they are making attachments to one another. Because now you have three people who in the last scene were talking shit to each other.
Sure, and now they're sitting in their room and smoking and hanging out.
And they're playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And like Taryn, played by...
Jennifer Rubin.
Yes, Jennifer Rubin as Taryn.
Also, her breakout role. Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest things about Taryn is that Jennifer Rubin, I guess she tells the story quite often, is that people come up to her and tell her that her character got them off drugs. How wonderful is that?
Like I said, she is someone who would not necessarily hang out with Will in the wheelchair playing Dungeons and Dragons and Joey who hasn't spoken in X number of years.
Yeah.
But here they are.
Hanging out.
Yeah, and like, yes, they are all locked up in this facility together, but they're forming attachments and bonds. So that antagonism, like I was saying, is friendly. It's good. Yeah. Like, that's why you don't see...
It's healthy ribbing.
You don't see a lot of it getting shut down by the superiors.
Right.
Like, they'll try to rein it in a little bit, but...
Yeah, it's just like any other like healthy kind of ribbing relationship. Is that you start off by making fun of each other.
Yeah.
So it's the foundation of every relationship.
And the fact that all of those relationships feel real adds to the credence that these are well-developed characters because you feel for them as you lose them. Yeah. They're not just cannon fodder for Freddy Krueger.
Right.
Like, most of them have a shelf life.
Yeah.
So we have not actually... Have we said that the subtitle of this movie is The Dream Warriors?
Yes. Yeah, I said we are doing a Nightmare on Elm Street 3 The Dream Warriors.
Yeah. I think it's important to point out the Dream Warriors aspect because...
It's giving power to the victims.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is still a Freddy movie, so you know what's going to happen. You're going to expect to see them be picked off one by one. But the Dream Warrior sounds like, all right, this is gonna be a healthy battle.
Yeah.
Like this is gonna be your, not just like your typical slasher film, which it is, but you do see kids fight back.
Yeah.
And that's awesome. And Nancy fucking fighting back.
Nancy is a badass in this movie.
Yeah, she is.
I love Heather Langenkamp too.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful.
So this sequence with the Freddy puppet where it kind of transforms into Freddy was actually shot in reverse.
There's a lot. We should mention this is, like we said, this is a lot of dream-oriented stuff. So you do get a lot of crazy puppetry and animation. So like right now we're getting almost like a stop-motion Freddy.
Yeah, and it is a stop-motion Freddy. And the transformation was shot in reverse.
Yes.
So it had the detail, and then they smeared the details out frame by frame and played it in reverse, which is kind of a neat concept.
Yeah.
And the Freddy snake, I forgot to mention, it was incredibly phallic originally.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it looks phallic.
It does. Oh,
But
yeah.
it was also pink.
Oh, no.
So they kind of solved that problem with the green slime.
God, this is brutal. Yeah, so our first kid to die here is kind of like, what was he, like the...
Bradley Gregg playing Philip.
Yeah, so Philip, his Freddy nightmare is rough. So it starts out with the Freddy puppet who jumps off the wall. You get your stop motion Freddy, which is awesome. He enlarges himself, and he starts slashing his arms and his legs, and then you see him pull out his tendons, I guess, and like a marionette, he starts walking Philip. And you do see this more too from the dream aspect. So he's sleepwalking. Essentially, everyone...
Because his issue is sleepwalking.
Yes. So everyone just thinks that this is another episode. And the way that he's walking is that...
He looks like a marionette.
He does look like a marionette, and it's so terrible. And so then you see all of his friends come up to the window. Will breaks the window. Of course, there's a fence right there, so they can't get out. And giant Freddy now, ginormous Freddy, is, cuts the tendons. And it's going to look like Philip committed suicide and jumped off the
Bell tower.
So, an incredibly gruesome first kill. It's the first of the group.
Yeah, and you see, everyone sees it happen.
Yeah. Oh, and they're screaming. They're up at this fence, and they are screaming for it to stop. And again, you get to see more of the dream aspect. So the biggest thing in the first one was that you didn't really see... You saw what happened to them in the dream, but you didn't see really what happened to their bodies outside of it. Whereas in this one, you get to see what's happening to them outside of that dream. You get to see from the other character's point of view, which is, I think, really impressive, and it makes it all the more horrifying.
Yeah.
Because, of course, then no one's going to believe anything that's happening to you. So, also, this was the only Freddy film to not begin with a nightmare scene. Yeah, it opened with Patricia Arquette, going to bed.
And crafting the house.
Yeah.
Mixing up paper mache.
Yep. And we should mention, they were already panicking about Freddy. Freddy, again, we're our old hats to who Freddy is now. So now we're just being introduced to the kids. We know what Freddy's coming for. And so you open with Patricia Arquette crafting, eating ground coffee and chugging Diet Coke with it. She wanted to stay awake.
Weird to think about these kind of teen institutes in today's day and age.
Sure.
But there was a whole period of time where you could see advertisements on TV for send us your troubled youth and we will fix them. And they're essentially institutes. They're not places of learning or healing. Even military school to a certain extent. But there were all these places for troubled youths. And even you remember Maury Povich would oh, we're going to send your child away for a week to this boot camp and they'll fix them. And the kid comes back all reformed after a week.
And crying to their mom and stuff. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and very real thing. And it's fucking weird to think about.
It is really weird to think about.
Yeah, so now we are at just about Jennifer's death scene. Jennifer's the one who wants to be on television.
Yes.
She said so when she gets out of here, she's going to go to LA and start
Make
a career.
it big. And so this is going to be, we've already seen two iconic Freddy transformations. What we're going to see now is what Freddy's known for.
This is the scene where Freddy became Freddy.
Yeah.
And the fun thing about the creation is it's actually two different visions coming together.
Yes.
Because the line...
This is it, Jennifer, your big break on TV.
Yes.
That was the original line.
Yep. And then they shot it twice like that.
Yep.
For a third shot, they changed the angle, and Robert Englund ad-libbed.
Yes.
Welcome to Primetime, Bitch.
Yeah.
And with the way that it was shot from two different angles, they were able to cut it together to make it sound like one continuous line. And that's the line that everyone knows for Freddy. That is when Freddy Krueger became Freddy Krueger.
You get your campy one-liner Freddy. Whereas, like you said, the first and the second were more darker toned.
Meaner.
Much meaner.
The Freddy in this movie is much more creative with his kills.
Yes.
Not just slashing you to death.
No,
you know?
God, no. The first one of the group to die is dragged around like a marionette. Like, that right there sets the tone for this.
And this scene, Freddy transforms, he embodies a television and then